y'all doing? I'm sure that I know a lot of you guys, especially y'all in Mesquite. Um, but for those of you who I don't know, hey, I'm Ariana. I am a senior, and today I'm going to be talking about celebrating God for His blessings and the good things. So today I'm going to be focusing specifically on the book of Daniel, specifically at Daniel 6. And basically, the context of this is Daniel is a man, and right now in this part of the story, he's high ranked in the kingdom. So King Darius has him up with the high officers and administrators, and he's in line to take charge of the entire empire eventually. And so all of these other men who are working with him are upset at that because, everybody wants to run the kingdom. And so they're like, why does he get to? And just all of this stuff. And they're just really jealous of him. And so they're trying to think of a way to take him down and to prevent that from happening because they know that also King Darius really loves Daniel. And they are not sure how to get that to happen. And they've been trying, and they couldn't find anything wrong with Daniel, because Daniel, he was kind, he was trustworthy, he did everything he was supposed to and more, and they were having trouble finding anything that they could put on him so that the king would get upset at him and not give him charge of his kingdom. And so the only thing that they could think of is Daniel was he was extremely devoted to his religion and to Jesus. And so he was an avid prayer. He was very much in relationship with God. And they noticed this, and they're like, hey, we can use this against him. And so what they did is they all went up to the king, and they had him cite a law that says that for the next 30 days, anyone who prays to anybody, whether it's a human, whether it's another being or supernatural, other than King Darius himself, so if they prayed to anyone except for King Darius, they would be thrown into a den of lions. Now, King Darius heard this, and he's like, yeah, sure, like, I'll sign this law, because so much of his higher elected people are telling him that it's such a great idea, and they're convincing him, they're giving them his all. He's like, yeah, okay, sure. And so he goes ahead and he signs this law. And Daniel 6:10 says, but when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room, with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. Now, when this happened, the people who had set up this plan went to the king. They're like, hey, you made this law, right? And, like, you said that anyone who did this would be put in the lion's den if they prayed to anyone but you. And the king's like, yeah, why? They're like, well, your faithful servant Daniel, like, he's been praying to his God. And this hurt the king. He was so upset at this because he loved Daniel. But there was nothing he could do, because in that society, once a king put a law into motion, it could not be undone. Like, that's just how it worked. He couldn't do anything, and he tried to do whatever he could, but it ended up just happening, and Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. And so I know at that point a lot of us are familiar with the story, or at least a couple of us, about how Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, and despite that, he came out the next day. Nothing, no scratches, no injuries. He was alive and well because God had protected him. And so, my first point is that God deserves our thanks, even if it takes sacrifice. Daniel thanked God every day of his life, but he didn't stop whenever his own life was threatened. Whenever he knew that he could be thrown into a den of lions, he continued to thank God. He put his life on the line for that. Now, I know we're not in that kind of situation. Like, we have the privilege to express our beliefs openly where we live and in our community, and we can worship and thank God freely. Um, but a lot of times we still aren't making sacrifices. And by that, I'm not talking about, oh, like, we're putting our life on the line to do this. But a lot of us use, like, oh, like, our schedules are too busy and I have too much going on and I just don't have time to thank God. I don't have time to talk to Him or to do any of this. And I'll just say, like, Daniel was helping run a kingdom. Like, he was next in line, he was a higher up, he was helping run an entire kingdom. And he still prayed 3 times a day, which is insane. And I'm not saying that we don't have busy schedules, because a lot of us do. We have school and sports, we have church, we have so many things going on, extracurriculars. But if Daniel could find time, I'm sure that we can also find a way to make that sacrifice. And so sometimes thanking God takes sacrifice, whether it's time, whether it's something else that's going on. But it's worth giving him our thanks, because he's worth our thanks and any of the things that we could sacrifice to give him that. Now, my next point is that giving God our thanks affects others. So in Daniel 6:7-9, it says, "We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked." So King Darius signed the law. Now, this was before Daniel was thrown into the den, before he was caught praying. This is when they had convinced King Darius to sign the law into effect. And then later on in the chapter, in Daniel 6:26-27, this is after King Darius had found Daniel alive and well, no scratches, no anything, and he saw what God had done to protect him. And King Darius says, "I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." So King Darius was not devout to God prior to what happened to Daniel, as we saw, because if he was, he wouldn't have signed that law. But he was like, yeah, like these people, my people, should only pray to me. They shouldn't pray to any other God, any other being, any other person, like just me. But we can see a shift in his heart and in his mindset throughout the story. And so, because Daniel decided to make that sacrifice and to thank God, and he didn't cave in to the societal norms and what was going on in his environment, the king ended up believing too, and he ended up spreading that word to all of his kingdom. The verses that I just read is what the king is saying to his kingdom. He say, believe in God, like worship God, see all that he's done, see what he did for Daniel, and like he is the true king. And so we can see how Daniel's belief in God and how him openly expressing his thanks to God made a huge impact in his society. Now, we can kind of relate this to our point, to today's world, because just like how in Daniel's environment at that time, he was kind of stuck in a box where it's either like he thanks God and he stays true to his beliefs, or he does what his society says and his environment says, and he just kind of does that against God. And so in our society, it often tells us to attribute all of the good things in our life to other things. It's like, oh, like, wow, you got a promotion, like that's all you, all your hard work, like all of that. And or it's saying like thank like your angel numbers or just other spiritual things like that. And I'm not saying like you didn't work hard for that promotion or you didn't work hard to get an A on that test or whatever it might be. But a lot of that thanks also goes to God. Like he made that possible. He made a way, and without him, we would have nothing good. James 1:17 says, "Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in our heavens. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow." Now, this tells us that everything good is from God. So even if we had a huge part to play and we put all of our time and effort into it and we worked hard to get this A in the test, we spent hours studying, if we get an A, like that's good and it's from God. And so our thanks still should go to him for that. Like, yeah, applaud yourself. You did good. Like you were obedient to what you should have done and God helped you to do that. But all of the credit doesn't go to us. It goes to God. So something that I want to challenge us all with, myself included, is two things. First off, to respond to our blessings, and second off, let our response to blessings point back to God. Now, I say both of these because a lot of times we can respond to blessings in our life in the wrong way. And that's what I was saying before about giving ourselves the credit, taking pride in all of that, or even just accrediting that to other things in our life that might have played a part in that. But I feel like even more so, we don't respond to those blessings at all. And I say this because it's so easy to get caught up in chaos of life, because sometimes life can be stressful, and not pay as much focus to the good things in our lives. And I feel like it can almost become like clockwork, and it gets easy for us to go through the motions because we get so many blessings from God. And so it's just something that we just get used to. And we're like, well, like, there's just thing in my life, and it just kind of goes, like, we go through the motions, and we don't remember to thank God for it. And a lot of times we don't even remember that it's from God. Like, we just don't think of that. But being intentional with giving thanks to God is so important, and it really does help us to fall better into obedience to Him. And so I want to challenge us all for every single day this week to thank God. It can be difficult to maintain a consistent prayer life, like praying to God every day, throughout the day. Like, that can be difficult. But in my eyes, I feel like it's even more difficult to just pray and talk to Him. Because I know a lot of the prayers can be like, God, like, can you please give me this? Or God, I need you to do this. Or God, use your powers, your healing powers. And a lot of it is asking God. And that's not a bad thing, because God says that to those who ask will receive. And He wants us to ask Him for the things that we need. But that's not where our whole relationship communication with Him should lie. It shouldn't just lie in us asking for things and us getting the things God. It should be thanking Him as well for the things that He's giving us. And so my challenge is just to spend some time this week just thanking God. Like, set a time, some time in your day, every single day for the next week, just to thank Him, not to ask for anything else, just thanking God for what He's given us. And so this can look like a lot of things, like however it works for you in your life. If it's you thank God right when you wake up in the morning, you thank God right before you go to bed. If you choose to set a 3-minute timer every day, thanking God just throughout the timer as it ticks down. If you choose to thank God for 5 things every day, however you want to do it, I just challenge us to thank God, and just without distractions, without us asking for things, just thanking God for what He's given us, whether we've asked for those things or if He's just given it to us, because He is just such a good Father. And so, regardless of how you do it, us giving God our thanks can make just such a big difference in our lives and in the lives around us, as seen in Daniel's story. So yeah, thank you guys. Bye.